and welcome to China Talk. Today we're going to talk about Mulan and feminism. Why don't you two introduce yourselves?
My name is Ray. I'm a program associate at the Wilson Center, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C.
I am Xiran. I'm a recent university graduate. I have a book deal, I guess. Iron Widow. It's a Pacific Rim meets The Handmaid's Tale retelling of China's only female emperor. It's coming out next year. I post history tidbits on the internet, but it's mostly non-serious because I'm not an academic. I just like 800-year-old cat poems, I guess.
Ostensibly, we're going to talk about Mulan. Siran, why don't you kick us off? What were your first impressions?
I knew that movie was trouble like 2 minutes in when it started being like, oh, if you had a daughter whose chi was so strong, would you tell her that only sons could wield chi? And I was like, oh no, what did they spin chi into? Because like chi is just something like in traditional Chinese medicine, it's just like the life force that goes through everyone. And then in the movie, they made it like some sort of like the force kind of supernatural thing, and it also like they made it gendered for no reason. While Chinese culture has enough misogyny, we didn't need this like addition. From the 4 white screenwriters, by the way, this movie has a white director, 4 white screenwriters, and a white costume designer. And it was just like Disney said that they wanted to produce a more faithful adaptation to The Ballad of Mulan, the original folk story. And that's why they removed all the iconic songs and all the fun about the cartoon Mulan. And if you have like white people producing that movie, it just does not feel sincere to me.
Yeah, and the irony of that comment, of course, is like never has there been more money and talent into costume design and set design in the tens, hundreds of millions of dollars that Tencent and IG and what have you are pouring into these sorts of costume dramas.
Yeah, no, exactly. And peak Hollywood is them, like, they paid for this white costume designer to travel around the European museums with the looted Chinese artifacts, and then China to soak up the culture when they could have just hired someone who like grew up in that culture and doesn't need to be paid to be sent on vacations and stuff. So it's baffling. They like made their jobs harder for themselves.
The sort of impression that it left on me was kind of like how Disney conceptualizes China at Epcot, which is one of their theme parks that sort of showcases different cultures around the world, but in a superficial way, like really focusing on the aesthetics and the architecture. So I think that was what I felt like in the movie, sort of going off the bat. I've watched a couple of other Disney's live action films, and mostly my assumption was that they were going to focus more on how it looked than doing anything super groundbreaking. However, like the politics of it really like spun out in a kind of interesting direction, in that the depiction of China really emphasized defending the emperor, defending the Silk Road, which was not something that I think was a really big theme in the 1998 film. And so that, from a political perspective, was really interesting given the role of the Silk Road in China's current real political stakes. The Belt and Road Initiative by Chinese government projects have been going on since, I think, they kicked it into high gear 2017 or so. And not to make too much out of how it works in the movie, but there you see this conscientious effort to try, emphasis on try, to reach out to Chinese markets and Chinese audiences. But the points that I assume will really fall short with that audience is, like Shiran just said, the concept of chi is something that I don't think American or Chinese audiences are really going to get. And the concept of sort of filial piety is also something that's not really depicted in a way that makes sense to Chinese viewers or American viewers, certainly not diaspora viewers that I'm seeing react to this film.
Yeah, so let's come back to filial piety in a second. But it's interesting you say that, Ray, and thinking about like the timeline of this script in the movie, it's almost like some Americans were reading English language think tank reports about China and like trying to do something that would seem nice, like in this circa 2017. And the whole vision of this as foreigners trying to make like off-brand CGTN content, really, especially on the political side, in the way talking about this emperor as like someone you have to follow no matter what, is ham-fisted even for domestic Chinese movies that do this sort of propaganda do it a few degrees away. It isn't this in your face.
No, and I think they definitely allow for a slightly more sort of character arc development, whereas I think that the narrative for 2020 Mulan really just it felt like they were trying to check boxes off of a checklist versus actually stitch together a sort of compelling narrative for their protagonist, which that's one of the things that and I know that there were certain things that certainly Chinese audiences and maybe some diaspora viewers found off, like too much slapstick, weird sense of humor about 1998, but they did try putting together a character arc for their main character.
Yeah, I think the decision to make Mulan have essentially superpowers was just a very baffling one. And I think it ties into like they thought that this whole idea of like Oriental mysticism, like there's some inherent magic about Asian people, so they had to like they ham-fisted that in for no reason whatsoever. And it killed her arc because then she starts off as this like great warrior already. So like in the training montage, you felt like she does not struggle with anything, and then she's just like automatically better than everyone, and then the entire message of the movie changes from the cartoon, because in the cartoon, like, she worked to be a great warrior using her smarts and like hard work, and then in this movie it's just like, oh, the message becomes great people shouldn't have to hide the fact that they're great. And I was just like, why? It's questionable.
Shiran, what was your take on the relationship between Mulan and the father and the emperor?
I don't think the father did enough to like redeem himself in Mulan's eyes, because I think in the cartoon you could tell that like the dad still cares about her and loves her despite being a girl, I guess. But in the movies, he still says, "Oh, like I'm blessed to have two daughters," but it still like his attitude still felt like very dismissive throughout the movie. And then especially after the scene where like it was such a powerful scene in the cartoon where after she leaves and then the father like tries to go chase her and then he falls down in the rain, and that was just like a very emotional thing. And then in the movie, that decision scene of her leaving just had no emotional impact whatsoever, because like the parents, they get up in the morning, they find out she's gone, and then they're just like they're immediately just like, oh, we can't tell this to anyone, and then it cuts away from them there, and they basically don't appear again until the end. So I didn't feel any bond between her and her family, which made it very weird for her to be like rewarded for her devotion to her family at the end. I guess like the mere act of going in her father's place is like being devoted to your family, but still, I didn't feel any connection between her and her family.
I actually watched a little bit of the 1998 Mulan after I finished watching the 2020 version, and you can see the sort of detail that went into establishing what she inherited from her family, especially her grandmother. I am very cross that they wrote the grandmother out of the movie.
I think they just like wrote out all the things that made the cartoon fun. Yeah. And I don't understand why.
And frankly, there's nothing like off about a grandmother that just does not care anymore and just does whatever she wants, because old people do that. But she I think her sense of thinking unconventionally is something that Mulan picks up on, and it makes sense for her character. With her father, the idea of hedging your bets, sometimes triumphing in adversity. And when she leaves, I remember the dad saying, if we go after her, she will definitely die. So the idea of feeling really protective towards her, I think it makes the sort of familial relationship more convincing than like a daughter as a sort of vessel for whatever like wise lessons or like things you like, just telling her what you want her to be, and that's it, which is what it felt like.
I also felt like there was a weird relationship between Mulan and the government and the emperor, and like I heard that like the CCP tampered with the script, and there were places where you could feel it, because there was one like really especially like basically disgusting scene where the enemy witch, played by Gong Li, she tells Mulan, hey, join me and we can like go take power together. And then Mulan's like, no, I know my place, and my place is to serve the emperor. And then
I imagine like there's pushback on all the scripts, but I feel like the domestic producers just have a better sense of where they can push back. And every edit Disney got, they were like, yes, sir, can I please have another?
Yeah, and I think another weird thing was like Mulan was essentially trying to convince the witch that as long as she is loyal to the emperor, then like people are going to accept her for what she is. So the message became like, "Oh, you should out yourself to your oppressors," which I found to be very strange.
Yeah, I was really curious going into this. Oh, they made Gongli a witch. There wasn't a witch, which I think a lot of times when I was telling people about this movie, there's no witch in Mulan. What is this?
And I don't know, there was yeah, I just honestly like her entire character gave me pause just in the trailer because in the trailer they were like there's a witch. I was like witch. China doesn't have witches, and I think a witch is such a like charged word. It invokes a very specific idea which does not exist in Chinese culture. So even if they wanted to say like woman who does magic, they could have used another word such as like shamaness or soothsayer. Is that how you say it? I don't know. But like another a word that doesn't invoke like the ideal of the Western witch. But then I went into the movie and I realized, oh, the ideal of a Western witch is exactly what they went for.
Yeah, yeah. For a lot of Chinese stories, like trickster women who do magic is more like fox spirits or something like that, or one of the
Hmm.
demons that you would have in Journey to the West. But witches, not so much.
So, are we ready for Xinjiang, Northwest China,
Okay,
as it's referred to?
let's
Okay.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to discuss the timeline of the film and how it relates to policy. So it was greenlit in 2015, and I think they filmed in 2017 or so. But by 2017, we were already seeing a lot of testimony and some reporting on the prisons that were being constructed in Xinjiang, including in the area of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region that the filmmakers credited in the film later on. And so, as people started to look at this region, there were actually some prisons, relocation camps that were constructed, I think, about 7 kilometers from where they filmed the dunes, which I think are actually pretty well known as a site in Xinjiang. Disney wasn't going to be able to bring a crew and equipment for a big box movie into China, any place in China, without any type of permission. But in going into Xinjiang in 2017, you were going to need to pass a lot of security checkpoints. So this was a conscientious choice on their part. I was listening to another podcast called Time to Say Goodbye, where their panel was discussing there had to be this level of cooperation and tacit, all right, this is just how they govern from the part of Disney corporate that had to have happened in order for them to do the film work that they did.
So like basically Disney just like shadily ignored all the atrocities going on, huh?
I mean, like the position that I think Hollywood has always tried to toe was, oh, we're not necessarily a political actor. And for Disney, their interests in China are pretty extensive. Disney even runs an English training course that's like half advertising it, where they use Disney characters to teach children English. In addition, they have parks in Shanghai, Hong Kong. They've relied extensively on the China box office. And so these, frankly, very capitalistic interests have really shaped how Disney's approached different types of politics and their sort of aversion to getting sort of really vocal on Chinese politics. When I think Liu Yifei posted on Chinese social media, like, I support the Hong Kong police. I think there was a part after it's like, you can dislike me if you want or something like that. Disney didn't say anything, even though at that point she had already been cast as Mulan. Donnie Yen's also been very pro Hong Kong police, but throughout the whole process, like, Disney has been very hands off when it came to sort of Chinese politics and how it may have tangentially crossed over with the movie. But the credits bit where they thank different local governments in Xinjiang, I think, puts the ball more in Disney's court than any of their actors. And this is why I think criticism on that level is going to be a little bit harder for them to ignore. I look at technology companies and their relationships with China, and I think that they tend to be characterized by how they interact with China when they think that there are profit opportunities or there's an opportunity to reach markets. But the mismatch here is that right now China and the United States are in a period where diplomatic relations are not good, and we don't know when diplomatic relations will improve. And what this does to businesses is businesses kind of pivot. For tech, this means that they are suddenly very concerned about Chinese security threats and will say so when they're testifying on Capitol Hill. But for Hollywood, it's going to be more complicated because they still have that market access for those that can still clear Chinese censorship. And for Disney, after I think 7 years in Tibet, and which I think actually came out right before the Mulan 1998 cartoon, they have been trying to do whatever they can to fence it for as long as possible.
Huron, what are some of the movies that should be made?
Oh man, you mean by like Disney?
Or I don't know. I just want to hear you pitch screenplay ideas for 20 minutes, but maybe we should probably make it relevant. So, like, what is the sort of U.S.-China production collaboration involving Chinese actors and Chinese content that you think is a story worth telling for this moment?
I would love it if they adapted my book. As for stories, I think that possibly Hollywood could do an adaptation of the Opium Wars, but I don't really trust them to do that. Not after like the shit they pulled with Marco Polo. That was just gross. Oh god.
I'm surprised that Hollywood hasn't taken more of a hack at Journey to the West yet, given that adaptations of it have been like the sort of bread and butter for fantasy pop culture in China. But I guess the closest thing they had was the Hollywood's attempt at Dragon Ball Z, which was very bad.
No, exactly. I think about all the stories that I would like Hollywood to adapt, but then every time I just think to myself, you know what, I don't trust them to do this. Ideally, I would like a big budget adaptation of the Warring States and the story of the first emperor of China because it's just epic.
So, feminism in modern China. Let's go.
Okay. When we think about how Mulan really factors into feminism and how women are seeing themselves in modern China, intellectually, the movie and the sort of writing behind it, I don't think it really gets into the issues that they're facing, whether it's the stress of work-life balance, the issues of really being undermined, oftentimes like the sort of inequalities of women being expected to do clerical work in a workspace, or women expected to like look a certain part. Alibaba, which is a giant tech firm in China, I think came under fire for showcasing, oh, we have such good looking women workers in a job ad. And so this is modern day China, but there are certain convergence points to the sort of gripes and grievances that women have that can play out in a film like Mulan, where they have that they might connect to. But given the sort of general kind of over seriousness of how Disney approached this, I think it was definitely a missed opportunity to connect to Chinese women and the real issues that they're dealing with in favor of something that seemed more quote unquote Chinese, but not actually Chinese.
A criticism that I've seen a lot on the Chinese review site of this movie is that it's a bad movie because it's a feminist movie. Like, feminism is straight up a bad word in China in a lot of spaces, which is a lot to unpack there. Mm-hmm. But then, like, they call nuquan like woman punching or like woman fisting, but woman fisting sounds just wrong in English. Yeah. But like they use it as an insult. Yeah. And then so like say even anything about gender dynamics, like someone pops up and be like, "Oh, you're a feminist." So they make that out to be a bad word. And so I think so their attitude is that this movie is bad because it's a movie that promotes feminism.
Yeah, there was a clip I think going around where Jet Li and his daughters were being interviewed on a red carpet, and the daughters, oh, I like this movie because it's an opportunity to talk about feminism, and then he cuts in and is like, oh, it's about loyalty to family, and you could see her sort of side eyeing her dad when he's
I
talking,
stand his daughter. Okay.
but yeah, like
I stand Jet Li's daughter for like side eyeing her dad because like probably Jet Li was like, oh, this isn't a movie about feminism. It's a movie about loyalty. Because like
yeah,
there's a stigma around feminism, and if you think about it, like why? Why is there a stigma about feminism? I think like the psychological root of that is like anti-feminist people thinking, oh, women don't deserve all these things that they're asking for. What the hell?
the scholar Lita Hong Fincher has written about this in her two books, but essentially, feminism and other types of civil society organizing, so labor unions, LGBT. As of late, the government has also gotten really leery about people sort of congregating in groups to organize because if it's not necessarily something that's really, really politically safe and politically centers the government, then they sort of start assessing the risk factor in those types of, groups, communities, organizing efforts. So feminism, even though on the surface level it shouldn't cross over with politically sensitive issues, a lot of things are becoming politically sensitive issues within China.
Which is just so annoying because like imagine like trying that hard to control your people. It just like it reeks of insecurity to me. Like why are you like so insecure in your role that you have to do this and like make people resent you more? It seems counterproductive. A giant shift in modern Chinese society is that women are like not only expected to have children and like take care of the children, they're also like it's not cool to be taken care of by men anymore. So like you can't even expect to be a stay-at-home mom because like you're looked down upon and you're like, oh, then you're only using this guy for his money.
Mm-hmm.
And so like women are expected to take on double burdens and men are not, they're still unwilling to take on the burden of child rearing. There is so much bitterness. You know how in China, women won't even consider marriage unless the guy has a cow, not a cow. That is like several hundred years ago. But she won't even consider marriage unless the guy has a car and like real estate that he owns. And I
Uh,
see so much bit toward that like basic standard in men. And which is just like, well, why are you so entitled that you think that you could have a wife and have a family if you don't even have that basic level of financial security? What the hell?
yeah, property ownership for women, I think, is kind of actually a tricky subject. It's actually quite hard for women to get their names on deeds for houses and apartments. I didn't know that until I had read the book Leftover Women. I think these really, really sort of annoying sounding like standards or social issues, oftentimes they can have sort of structural roots. So pay inequality between men and women, the sort of how the different expectations in marriage, people's tendency to try to assess the class of potential partners. There's a lot of like these sort of very gendered economic dynamics that in turn form these stigmas and ultimately loop back into the problems that feminism is facing.
Yeah, what I think is also a big issue is just the issue of like women taking maternity leave, and that seriously affects their careers because companies don't want to hire a woman only for her to like go on maternity leave for several months. And for this
Mm-hmm.
reason, I think way back when China opened the one-child policy to a two-child policy, there were a lot of companies that were like there was something like suddenly all of their entire like female workforce of like childbirthing age was like a potential person who would like have to take a maternity leave, and companies were very like unhappy about that, so they like started hiring less women.
Who's your favorite, maybe like top three favorite women from Chinese history from over 500 years ago.
From over 500 years ago. Okay, so my top favorite Chinese woman is not Wu Zetian. It's Queen Dowager Xuan of the Qing dynasty. She was, I think, the first emperor's great grandmother. And I didn't like her because she was she like used her sexuality as a weapon. So like back then she was a kingdom on the very west of China, and it was trying to expand into the Central Plains, but it also like faced pressure from behind it from like a nomad tribe called the Quanrong. And then so Queen Dowager, her son was like the king of Qing at the time. And then so she was just like, I got this. And so she seduced the leader of the Quanrong tribe. She had 2 kids with him, and then they had an affair. Well, it's not an affair, her husband's dead, but they had a relationship for like over 20 years. And then she used that relationship to keep the Quanrong off Qing's back the entire time, so Qing could go like fight more into the Central Plains. And then 20 years later, when the time was right, she did not hesitate in ordering him killed, and also like she ordered the 2 children that she had with him killed, and then she destroyed the entire tribe. So that was just like, damn, she did not give a shit about what anybody thought of her, and then she used like every advantage she had to like improve Qing and then like consolidate her son's rule. And it was just like she's a very impressive woman to me. Okay, yeah. So second is of course Wu Zetian, and then like her story is too long to tell in a podcast. The most impressive thing about her is that she went through 2 harem battles. Like she was the concubine of Emperor Taizong of Tang. He's like considered the greatest Chinese emperor or whatever. She was like his concubine at age 14. And then it went nowhere because like their age difference was like too great. And then I don't think like he liked her type either. So after he died, she got sent to a nunnery to like be a nun for the rest of her life because like no other man could touch her because like she was the emperor's concubine. But then normal people would have given up at that point. She did not. I don't even think I've known another example of this one emperor's concubine becoming the next. But no, when Emperor Taizong was on his deathbed, she had an affair with the crown prince who was closer to her age. So after she got to the nunnery, she wrote a poem reminding the crown prince of like the love that they had. And then the crown prince was like, okay. And then he took her back to the palace. And then within like 4 years or something, she was made empress. So like it really shows you that, picking the right guy for you is the most important. Because like for sure, Zong was a more impressive man than Emperor Gaozong, his son. But still, Gaozong was the one who gave her the world, and Taizong just left her in his harem for like 12 years. So like you have to pick the right man for you. That's the most impressive thing she's done. She went through 2 harem battles. And number 3, this was ancient queen in the Shang dynasty called Fu Hao. She was like a warrior queen. There's not a lot known about her, but I just like her because like she's a warrior queen, and then she had she like led armies to like pacify rebellions and take over kingdoms, and then she was like very well respected by her husband. And then I think they dug up her tomb, and then there was like all sorts of lavish stuff in there. And then they also found like oracle bones because she died young. She died at like 34 or something. And then they found oracle bones of like her husband, the king, constantly asking the spirits whether she was doing well in the underworld.
Aww.
Yeah, there's not a lot known about her, but I like what she represented way back in the Shang dynasty.
All right, Shiran and Ray, thanks so much for coming on China Talk.
Okay, man, this podcast is gonna be so disjointed, but it's gonna be fine, I guess. I will trust you and your editing magic.
Let's get down to business. To defeat the Huns. Did they send me daughters? And I asked for sons. You're the saddest bunch I ever met, but you can bet before we're through, Mister, I'll make a man out of you. Tranquil as a forest, but on fire within. Once you find your center, you are sure to win. You're
Say goodbye to those who knew me.
Boy, was I a fool in school for cutting Jim. This guy's got him scared to death.
Hope he doesn't see right through me.
Now I really wish that I knew how to swim. You must be swift as a coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon. Time is racing toward us till the Huns arrive. Heed my every order, and you might survive. You're unsuited for the rage of war, so pack up, go home, you're through. How could I make a man out of you? You must be swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon. You must be swift as a coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as